I'm so happy to be here and to be hosting this tonight. When Rosie and James first told me about their plans, I thought it was really ambitious and absolutely lovely idea, and I didn't really think it was going to go anywhere. And now I'm standing here and seeing a full room, and this is possibly one of the most well-organized and best-looking events I think I've been to. So props for that. And I think so we've got such a packed schedule tonight. I'm not going to talk very much. But I do want to say one thing, and I think it lies at the core of what this event is about. And essentially it's about getting people to feel things. Now, my job is as a geography teacher, and one of the important things that you learn as a teacher very early on is that you need to make people feel things to get them to engage with the world and then to get them to do things, okay? And I think that's roughly what tonight is about. And we're massively privileged to have a very eloquent and inspiring keynote speaker tonight. Andy Middleton is going to kick the night off. Andy's the Chief Exploration Officer for TYF. I think that's the coolest job title I've ever heard. As CEO, essentially, just a Chief Exploration, not an Executive Officer. And the TYF are a social enterprise group based in Pembrokeshire in Wales. And they basically give people the confidence and skills and reasons to be revolutionaries. Now that might sound a little bit cryptic, but I'm going to leave it to Andy to explain exactly what that is and to kick the night off. So if you'd like to give a warm round of applause to Andy Middleton.
Okay, main slide.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, and a huge pleasure to be here in the company of geographers. How many other geographers do we have in the room, in the house tonight? It's better than average. Welcome, geographers. Welcome, geographers. The future is all about place. And so I think picking up on that great introduction, I want to talk for a few minutes about what I see to be our greatest adventure. And as we heard right at the start, say this is not about some great peak that's never been climbed before by the direct route on Thursday afternoon. This isn't about an ocean that hasn't been kayaked with green paddles, or about any other bit of trivial pursuit that's really irrelevant in the kind of the world we're in today. So I want to put to you that our greatest adventure is understanding how to find our place on this little precious planet of ours. This is where I live, on the west coast of Wales, and St David's the view from my house. And being connected to nature is a real privilege I've had for my whole life, working in a variety of different places. But what I come back to is home and ocean and spaces that are precious. And what I'm reminded of, and I'm not going to go through these in a lot of detail, but what I'm reminded of, is this stuff. And there's been quite a lot about this in the papers over the last couple of weeks, about the fact that 75% of the insects in Germany are no longer there. You know, this dragonfly on my pond is one of the rare exceptions. But we're not in a good place around the loss of biodiversity. Half of wildlife being lost in my lifetime. You know, the scale of understanding this, and people recognizing that someone who is leaving school today will spend their entire life picking up the pieces of my generation's bad mistakes, and our forebears, and the people who followed us. What's happening in our Amazon to make beauty products and food products, clear cutting the Amazon, this is like 4 times the area. Wales has got a great project called The Size of Wales, which is about reforesting or improving the quality of the forest about an area the size of Wales every year. But because it's to try and counter the fact that 4 times the area of Wales cut every year for palm oil. And it's not sustainable. And this is one of the rare occurrences. This is my mountain. This is a 600-foot tall mountain. It's a beautiful hill. It's only 600 foot tall, but it's about as good as we get, and it's near my house. And it's pretty rare that we get snow on the hills on the coast. But we get 70 days a year less of cold weather and winters than there were in the 1960s. because the climate's already changing. And this figure, I think we'll hear a lot more about tonight. This is the date. 2050 is the date by when the weight of plastic in the oceans, if the Anne MacArthur Foundation's figures are right, will equal the weight of fish. And I grew up not seeing this stuff ever on my beaches. We'd see seaweed and wood and seashells washed up. And the world is changing around us. And that's the end of these bits, because I think what I want to talk about is hope and understanding. Can I just check, quick sign up, how many people have seen this before? Okay, it's a new slide for most people here. Brilliant. If you haven't seen it, I think this is the one slide that's really, really good to get your head around, to explain to people what we're trying to do here. This is from a really simple, beautifully executed framework called donor economics, and essentially says we've got to create an economy that fits within the green lines here. The outer red lines are where we're overshooting around climate and oceans and biodiversity loss, and the inner lines where we're in the red zone is where we're under-delivering about creating the social foundations for a good society. We have to deliver our adventure within that space. We need to understand how the adventure products that we buy, that we make, that we sell, are fit for an economy that fits within those green lines. And to put that into the sense of scale, we need to halve the amount of carbon in our economy in 10 years. So it's quite a lot of work to do, but I think adventure is the thing that has more power than anything to inspire people how to do this. I can go back over the other slides. We could kill people with pessimism about what's wrong. And it's really important we understand the risk, but recognizing what we can do by taking people into wild places to create that sense of wonder and awe, so that we fall in love with nature again so deeply that it changes the way people live when they're not in there. Rather than just doing lightweight travel, let's live lightweight lives. So I just want to put this idea to you in a practical term. It's a framework we developed a few years ago, asking how does nature work? How does nature do quality? And it kind of works. It thrives or goes extinct based on its appropriate response to changing circumstance. And we asked ourselves, well, how do humans measure quality? We measure it by the rules that we set. Pretty much all the plastics in the oceans, all the CO2 in our atmosphere has happened within the law. We never set the laws around environment to create a thriving planet. If every business in the world was fully compliant with all of the laws about environmental and biodiversity protection, we'd still be completely screwed, because they were not set in the right way. So down here, bottom left, is where government sits. It's largely legal, but pretty shit at delivery, because it's never set out to deliver. Top left is where corporates live. They're brilliant at getting products out the door, but often get things that shouldn't be made. Crisp packets, plastic bottles that don't get recycled, cheap surfboards that litter our beaches after 10 minutes use, that are made to look like surfboards but don't function like them. The bottom right is where people have good intentions and low impact. A lot of NGOs live in that space. And it's great to have Hugo running one of the panels later on from SAS, because I think one of the best examples of how small groups of people can make a dent when they're really focused. But a lot just end up having really good voices, but don't know how to do delivery, don't know how to use social media. And up on the top right is to ask, if we took reality into account, what's happening to nature, what's happening to humanity, what's happening to health and well-being, what would we set out to do if you knew you couldn't fail and had the best possible team of people around you? And I want to give you a couple of examples of that. This one here, get used to seeing this logo here. Little B down the bottom here. Come up and see Kate upstairs during the break. This is B Corp. How many people have heard of B Corp? Fantastic, even more than geographers. That's not so good for geography, but great for B Corp. So B Corp is, for me, head and shoulders the best thing I've ever come across in business. It's a network of 2,000 businesses, or so 2,500, be 1,000 in the UK in the next 5 years, who exist to change capitalism from the inside. It is by far the most constructive, collaborative group of people I've ever worked with, and we do good parties as well. And the kind of people that, which is a really important part of it, because if we're not partying and not celebrating and just talking about what's going wrong, you don't get to do the good stuff. So there's a lot of businesses you would recognize are B Corps, Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's, and a whole bunch of others. We've got a handful upstairs here, Flugelbinder, Sup Kids, TYF are all B Corps. It's a really, really good thing to do and helps you measure what matters and make that commitment. So really important. I normally show a picture of my daughter Bonnie. I hope she's watching tonight. Surfing in Sri Lanka because she's a really good surfer. This is a picture of her in the middle when she was 2 going coast-steering, okay. She'll love me forever for that picture. So we ask ourselves, if we were serious about this data, knowing that young kids are going to grow up in a changing world, what's the minimum level of capability we'd set them out to do? We're pretty clear about what we would do if we would set them onto a river, up a rock face, into the wilderness or onto the ocean in terms of the equipment we'd give them around buoyancy aids and crash hats and stuff. But in terms of having the equipment and the know-how to go and shape this world, I think there's a different set of skills. So our goal, and this is like hot off the press, if we can pull it off based on the meeting this afternoon, is to get every single secondary school in Wales, which is only 200 schools, set up to take part in a gigaton project to work out how much of a gigaton they can imagine taking out of the carbon budgets of their economies. I think every kid needs to spend something like 500 hours practicing for real how to do the stuff that matters. So we're campaigning to get kids working on the school, to do takeovers of the non-personnel parts of the school budget, around energy, waste, water, travel, food, for real, so that they get to understand how to manage the things that will shape the future of their lives. If we do that in every school, with the confidence of how to play and how to be courageous and everything else that we can teach through adventure, to be adventurous in that spirit and collaborative, I think we can shift things in the world of that. You'd be aware that there's been a bit of stuff in the press about health being a problem. The gross cost of mental health in Wales, and I don't have the figure for England, is equivalent to half of the entire public budget. £7.2 billion a year. The cost of physical health is 650 million. Yet we know beyond doubt that time and nature, guided if need be, changes people's lives. Getting people fit through walking, kayaking, cycling, or whatever we do. It's cheaper to take people to do that than give them Ritalin. Yet it doesn't work. We haven't found a way of taking that to scale. I think creating an effective natural health service is one of the single most powerful things that this industry could do if we set out to work this in a constructed, joined-up way. I think we could be getting paid more by the government to do this than GSK get paid for selling antidepressants. Because time and nature is what delivers this, yet people by themselves, if they haven't grown up in the space that many of us have, then we can't do this. The other piece, this is a better picture of my daughter that she prefers. So I had the pleasure a few years ago of starting a sport called coast-steering. We gave birth to it. We created that sport down on the coast in West Wales, is what we used to do when you weren't surfing, and turned it into an organised sport. And I trademarked the name with the idea of creating the sport that had the highest environmental and safety standard of any sport in the world. And everyone I talked to said, "Oh, you're just trying to get rich." Maybe my reputation wasn't what I thought it was. But I couldn't get anyone in the outdoor sector to understand the opportunity that we had through nature. So I believe that there are few experiences anywhere in people's lives where those who guide others in nature, whether you're working for the National Trust or National Park or formal or informal adventure activities, where we can have so much close contact to the emotions that can change people forever. Restaurants don't come close, shops are transactional. You could be out with people as a minimum for hours, if not longer, days, weeks maybe in the outdoors. I believe as an industry, if we said, let's collectively work out what it would take to get 1 million people to change the way that they live as a consequence of what they see in nature. So leave no trace doesn't become the thing you do on holiday, but it becomes a way of living. And we worked out what that might look like, then we could be a massive catalyst for change at a country level. And one of the ideas for doing that is that, where anyone here, loads of people do most first aid course. I'd imagine there's even more than B Corps here. First aid courses, show of hands. Oh, it's a great place to get hurt. Okay, so watch those stairs. So people who do this kind of stuff will remember for years later the basic principles of pressure in a powder recovery position. Let's teach the equivalent of first aid, but not for the accidents that have happened. Let's teach it for the future instead. And work out how we teach those who take others into nature, how to best communicate the information around physical health and well-being, around the relationship between time and nature and trees and the ocean and our mental well-being, about the consumption of our resources. How do we dematerialize the outdoors? How do we stop making kayaks and make them available to rent on the beaches instead? How do we make sure that our surf beaches aren't littered with cheap, crappy boards that break after 10 minutes? And how do we learn to reconnect the lives we live back to nature? So I think we have an opportunity to create, in effect, a first aid course for nature that gives people the keys to a thriving, different future. And I believe the people in this room today are enough to make that happen. So my last question and my last crowd poll, you probably won't get asked by anyone to apologize if everyone else does this. I want to know who in here is up for the idea of collaborating in an open, completely shared way to work out how we create a qualification that's fit for the future rather than accidents that happen, and shape up a new qualification with the Institute of Outdoor Leadership, with Greenpeace, with RSPB, with anyone, to create content so that every single person who guides others into nature is qualified to teach them how to protect the future as well as what goes wrong when you slip. Anyone interested? That's really encouraging. I have no idea how to make this happen. But I think I think we have the expertise in the room to do that. So what I would love you to do, if you've got an interest in that, is to come and find me or Sam afterwards, or text me, email me, whatever, and I think together we'll organise a collaboration. What I'm interested in seeing on the back of this, this, like Fergal was saying earlier, kind of, first phone calls. Oh, really? You want to come and talk about this stuff? That'll be really interesting. Rosie going, not so long ago, we've sold not so many tickets yet. It'll be okay. And look at this incredible crowd. So I think that potentially the gathering that started here today, that's non-partisan, that's not based on the trade association or an industry per se, can hold the space for a conversation about how we change an industry and bring in the people who can help us to do that. So if you're up for that, I really welcome the journey. And I really want it to be informed by B Corps because they bring a bit of the best of that. It'll definitely involving drinking, dancing on tables, surfing and partying, because that's the bit that we do very best. Have an amazing conference. Thank you very much indeed.